Hi guys, it's Wendy from Ask the Landlady, and I'm here with all the tips and tricks to help you make a profit in real estate rentals. I do have a book out, Lessons from the Landlady. Check it out on Amazon or my website, www.askthelandlady.com. So, we got that business out of the way. Now we can talk property. And today's question is actually kind of a downer, but it's something that I thought it was kind of important to address. And the question is, how can landlords and landladies deal with difficult issues like domestic abuse and child endangerment? So recently, I was scrolling through Facebook and saw a posting on a landlord help site where a frustrated property owner was, had put pictures and was saying, we'd rented an apartment to a family just 5 months earlier, where they'd heard reports from the tenants that children were crying all day long. So they went and did an inspection, which is the first thing you always do an inspection. And he was certainly upset because it was only 5 months and the condo was completely trashed with toys and garbage everywhere. There was a parent at home playing video games. The other parent was working, and the children ages 1 and 4 were just wandering around the home unattended. It was clear that the children were being neglected. The babies were in a diaper for too long. Debris was everywhere, and this was a nice location with a rental price of $1,600 a month. And the landlord was upset and asked the family to immediately clean up the unit. Furthermore, he reported the child neglect to the appropriate government agency in his community. So he had another inspection, the property was still trashed, and the children were still neglected. The Children Protective Services Agency declined to take any action, and the tenant was pursuing eviction just based on the lease violation of it being trashed and no progress towards being, it being unclean living conditions and not being able to get cooperation from the tenant had documented. His concern was now for the children, who would simply be moved to another location and still be neglected by the parents and raised in unhygienic conditions. So that's the problem that we don't like to talk about and address, and that's the fact that landladies and landlords are privy to how people live and the way that tenants interact with each other. And sometimes that means we come across some very difficult situations like child abuse. Sure, we can take the property back when the lease is being violated, but we can't fix social problems that go beyond us, like children being neglected, spouses being insulted, and don't even get me started on drug addiction issues. It's a tough business and can be really upsetting for sure. So I have a case that haunts me to this day. I was early on as being a landlady because this happened 19 years ago, right? So it was my first year. I rented to a husband and wife with one baby. My maintenance guy was working upstairs. We had a vacant up there, and he was saying, "Wendy, this baby's just crying. So he said, I think something's going on. I think the tenants do drugs. So we did this is how we handled it. We had a police officer, called them up, and don't use the 911 line, but we called and asked them to come over and do a wellness check with us. And the officer agreed to meet me at the unit. We could both hear the baby crying. We're outside the door, pounded, and wouldn't do it. So the police officer gave me permission to unlock the door and go in because we could hear this baby crying, could not get anybody to answer the door. So first thing, if you get a situation like that, have the policeman there. That way they tell you to unlock the door. They tell you what to do. They hear, you can document, there will be a police report. Those are all important things that will happen later on when you need to take action to get the property back in that type of situation. So what happened is we went in there, the parents were drugged out of their minds, baby was wearing a diaper for days, it was horrific. So the police officer, got him up, told him to, do whatever, and then we had to leave. He said, "I'm gonna call Child Protective Services, you do the same." So we both called, and basically they weren't paying rent, so it was easy. I filed an eviction. It was a 30-day process to kind of like get the appointment, and they didn't show up. I got the eviction 10 days later. The bailiff was going to be there and we were going to move them out if they didn't move out. So meanwhile, my maintenance guy is still there working on the apartment, right? Can still hear the baby crying. We still kept calling the police. The police like, "There's nothing we can do, Wendy. Did you call Child Protective Services?" "Yes, I called them. I called them and I called them and I called them." I remember tearfully the day before, I could see they were moving stuff out, and I said, "You never did anything. These children, I don't know where they're going. I don't know what's going to happen to them. They're just probably going to go situate in a flop house with this baby that, is being just horribly neglected. And I remember the lady at Child Protective Services, she sounded tired. She'd endured many phone calls from me, as well as everybody else that was dealing with these horrific situations. I had one bad situation and I was gonna get my property back. She has to hear about them every day, right? Terrible. Those of you who work in foster situations and social work, it's a special place in heaven for you, because you have to hear these stories and know that a lot of times our hands are tied, that we can't do as much as we can as we want to do. So 19 years later, I still just tell this story for one main reason, and that is that people need to know what goes on in their community. That guy had a nice condo, $1,600. He didn't expect somebody to be in there with a child neglect situation. You probably live or work with somebody who's being beat up by their spouse, or have been abused by a child, or somebody in your neighborhood who's dealing with drug addiction in their households. And Gosh, I am so sorry that this question is a downer, but just one of the things where you do the best that you can. Report domestic abuse, report child abuse when you see it, because communities can only get stronger by people noticing and trying to create real change. I feel bad that it didn't work as well as I wanted, but there was a good paper trail, there was a good lot of documentation. If that person got to the next step, some action would be taken. I feel certain of it, because we were reporting. And don't get discouraged even when the system lets you down. It's a long-term problem and there will be no easy, quick fix. But again, it's that see something, say something. We can only get stronger when we all work together. And landlords and landladies, I think, have just an ethical, obligation to report things when they see it. A lot of times, that's the dirty little secret, that it doesn't matter how you live, what type of house you live in, where you are. There are so many children in this country that are being abused, and so many domestic abuse situations, and drugs that are in every sector of our population. And we can only get better by trying to report it and act and do better. So again, you can get your property back, right? And you can do all that, but it's just, these are the situations where it is really, really tough to be a landlord and landlady, because you're seeing the way people live and you want it to be better, but you can't. You just provide the housing. And again, we're all in this together. Have you had a situation like this that haunts you to this day? What did you do about it? Have you dealt with domestic abuse and drug addiction and difficult issues where you've had to take the property back, but you can't fix the long-term solution? It's definitely tricky and hard for sure. So again, it's not easy. Let's all stick together. Hit subscribe. I'd love to hear from you. Thanks. Have a great day.